TigerLily is up next.
Hello.
Hi, Stefan. Can you hear me?
Sure can. How you doing?
Hello. Yay, I finally get to talk to you. I've been a big fan for about a year or so. I met you through Bill Buford. Do you know who Bill Buford is?
Yes, I do. I do. How is the bill?
He is the first one that I heard that had the balls to actually say in front of a whole group of constitutional oath keepers that were talking about the slaughter, the murder of Jose Guerrera, a two-time Iraq veteran. It was about a year ago that they had this, or 18 months ago, this memorial service because SWAT killed him. I mean, in his house, and it was just such a grueling, appalling thing. And you had all these oath keepers talking about how, well, it's not the police, it's the policies. And Bill Buford, in front of all of these people, got up and he says, I've been listening to everybody talking about how it's not the police, it's the policies. I'm here to say bullshit. And I'm like, oh, the first person I ever heard say that. And so I've been following him. He's the founder of ZeroGov.com, and I've been following him. And numerous times he would mention your name and he'd spell it. And so finally I got up off my butt and I Googled you, and I said, well, let me look into. And let me tell you, I think I am your biggest fan next to your wife and your daughter. I am 52 years old almost, and I literally go to sleep listening to your books or listening to something in my ears because I feel like I've got 51 years of deprogramming that needs to be done, and I think that you're the best person to do it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, too, that I hope, given your gender, that you do not feel that balls are necessary to speak truth to power. Otherwise, you're going to short of a courage set, and I just wanted to mention that.
I just love your quirky humor. I wanted to I don't want to bore you with all my whole awakening and everything, but it basically was, I'm a helmet choice activist, or I was a helmet choice activist 2 years ago because I quit.
A helmet choice activist? What that means?
Yes. In other words, I think in Canada, you guys have to, if you're on a motorcycle, you have to wear a helmet. I mean, there's no choice.
Oh, yeah, got it. Yeah.
Now, in the United States, a third of the states still require, like Canada, that you have to wear a helmet. Now, in 1969, I think it was, the feds came down and told all the states, you will make your motorcycle riders wear a helmet along with the seatbelts in the cars, and if you don't, we're going to take away your funding for your highways. So that's how that started in the U.S., and then since then there was a revolt and what have you, and so now a third of the states still require helmet. I call it helmet bondage, and I think it's cute that you talk about. You've mentioned helmets sometimes, like in a radical way, what I didn't realize though is that it's the whole helmet thing is like an indoctrination as well, because it's like the when people thought that the world was flat, and people would say, well, obviously it's flat because they can't conceptualize the roundness of it. Well, it's kind of like there's a few people alive in the world who say, oh, a helmet saved my life. But how many people have been killed wearing a helmet? And if they were alive, they could say, you know what, if it wasn't for this damn helmet, I could have heard something. I wouldn't have been parachuted off of my motorcycle because of the wind, or I could have seen better and stuff like that. So I started to do a little bit of critical thinking that way. And that whole activism is what kind of got me, a little critical thinking and to start questioning things. And I had already questioned my indoctrination, my religious indoctrination, which I grew up Southern Baptist. Okay, I'm Mexican and in Indiana. My mother didn't know English, and my father was a wetback back in the 50s, so I had a lot of indoctrination to overcome, and it wasn't until I realized that I could be murdered in the state in a helmet state if I am not dressed the way these cops think that I'm supposed to be dressed, and the law is completely unenforceable. But anyways, enough about helmet laws. I have a specific question that I want to ask because of all of this research that I've done that has exposed the statism to me, the evilness of statism. I went to legislative hearings and what have you, and this one Senator Schneider, who's retired now, he actually said that giving Nevada the choice, Nevada riders the choice to wear a helmet is an abomination. So I went on, and because he's like the low-hanging fruit and I can't really get in too much trouble, I wrote him a letter and I made it public, and the letter was basically, hey, you're fat and I don't tell you what to eat.
Right.
And it got a whole lot of, and I noticed that in your bio it says that cooking is your hobby. Well, I would never deprive you of your hobby, and it's more likely that you'll be a public burden because of your eating choices than I will because of my choice of headgear while riding a motorcycle. So, anywho, my question is this: as I've been exposing things, as you know, people, I think you described it one time, when you tell the truth to a statist or something, it's like it's throwing venomous spiders and venomous snakes at them, and they withdraw at you. So I had this, I was on this Facebook group, and I did this expose of a judge who found a guy not guilty, even though he was wearing a helmet that was like the size, it looked like a little tiny frisbee on top of his head. But the guy, because the law is unenforceable, the judge had no choice but to find him not guilty. But he broke all kinds of rules to do that, and he was a total bully. And I did a really scathing video production of that, and I got kicked off of this Facebook group because and it's a motorcycle rights activism group, because their leader, so-called leader, who is a lawyer, a so-called constitutional lawyer, told him, hey, you got to get rid of it. It's either me or TigerLily. One of them has to go because I cannot be even remotely associated with her, because what she's doing is very dangerous. She's exposing, this stuff and putting her ideology onto it, and so I got kicked out. Well, I was wondering, what is your take? What is your opinion? Is it worth it to even expose him? Because you mentioned that when you expose me or ostracism, I know, and that is so uncomfortable that it makes people think twice before doing stuff. Is it a violation of the universally preferred behaviors that I would that I would expose this so-called constitutional lawyer for having kicked me out in a way that that was I thought wrong, but here he is talking about freedom and going back to our constitutional principles, and then he kicks me out, and that's the basic fundamental 1A, freedom of expression, So what is your take? How far should I go on this?
That's a good question. I would guess that his motives is that maybe he would face some negative repercussions for his career if he were found to be associated with people who were talking trash about judges, right? I mean, lawyers are kind of dependent on judges, right? So maybe he's concerned that someone would complain, or maybe he was concerned that some opposing lawyer would use this in some way. So my guess is that he's trying to protect his relationship with the judiciary. Would that be some kind of reasonable guess?
Absolutely. Yeah, but I have seen he's actually grown, because this happened about a year ago, and I listened to him, and he was a guest on a radio show, and somebody sent me the link, and they said, oh, listen to him. He sounds more like you now. So he's actually grown. He's actually, and maybe it was, I'd like to, say that maybe it was a production like mine where you just flat out put it out there and show the evilness of this judge treating this defendant like an absolute master dominating his slave. Maybe although it pissed him off and he'll never admit it, that it was that was the thing that got him to think twice. It seems like he's already moving more towards our direction, in terms of recognizing what's going on. So I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, this is I certainly feel that this is a very strong issue for you, and I'll give you the basic checklist that I go through and with myself when I get myself very strongly when I feel very strongly about a moral issue. Did you have any problems with moral hypocrisy with authority figures when you were a child?
Absolutely.
Go on.
Absolutely. Well, I told you I was raised Southern Baptist, and
Right.
my father was, he learned English and everything. He worked in the mills and stuff, and he would say things like, he's very racist, and he would say things about black people and white people when he's a brown person, and yet, one time I went to a, believe it or not, Catholic school for one year, and that's another story, but I had a friend who was African American, and I brought her over to my house, and I only brought her over because I didn't think my father was there, and he showed up, and I was scared. I thought he was going to freak out and say, we don't want any black people in my house or something, but no, he was so incredibly cordial, and I'm like, what the hell? And those kind of inconsistencies, and also the inconsistencies that I see now, where my mother, it's like it was virtuous to beat us, especially my little brother. She used to beat the crap out of my little brother because dancing is not allowed in the Southern Baptist, in the culture that I was raised. And my brother, when he was little, I remember that he would be up on top of the table and he'd be dancing, and my mom said, "Get down from there, or the devil is going to come and get you." And then he'd bend down and get a couple of toothpicks, and he'd say, "I will stick the devil in the eyeballs with these sticks." So she grabbed him and she tied him to a chair in the basement and just got a branch and just was beating the crap out of him. And I'm upstairs with my hands over my ears, screaming, like singing to myself, to that sort of thing. So there was a lot of violence, and I also had the contradiction about my mother being a Southern Baptist and my father being a non-practicing Catholic. So she called my father, instead of honey, or her term of endearment was punishment behind his back. That was her punishment because she didn't obey her parents to have married somebody who was a believer of the Jesus whole thing. And
Wow.
And so I went to church, and I prayed a lot for my father, and that he wouldn't go to hell. And then I was really pissed off at God because he killed my mother first. And that was like, what the hell? Why would my mother die this horrible cancerous death when she was the picture of virtue according to what you're supposed to do according to the Bible? So that's kind of woke me up a little bit. And then fortunately, I'm glad that she died first now in retrospect, because my mother, I got an opportunity to be closer to my father, and I got to see that my father, though he didn't go to church, though he swore and he drank a lot of alcohol, he's an alcoholic and he was a chain smoker, I got to see that my father actually had more virtue in him than my mother, in the sense that he was more true to his belief system, and he wasn't as much of a hypocrite as my mother, and I got to understand what kind of made him tick a little bit. So it made me have more compassion for him. So yeah, I had a lot of contradictions in my life and stuff.
Wow. What happened to your brother in the long run?
He's spending some time in jail with O.J. Simpson right now.
Oh, gosh. What happened?
That's what happens. Well, what happened is that, first of all, the war on drugs, and this was in the when Bush won. First Bush did his minimum mandatory, and he had a young family, and he got caught in a sting operation, and he served 4 years because he refused to narc out anybody because he's got that mafia code going on. And so he got out after his 4 years, and then I helped him get a job and everything. So then he got into drugs, and then he started robbing like convenience stores. So he's in a halfway house now, so he's not technically with O.J. Simpson, but he was with him for several years out there in Nevada.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. I mean, that's from the astounding amount of violence that he experienced at the hands of your mother.
Yeah.
It's not terribly shocking. I mean, as you're probably aware, these things are quite related. And I just, gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, that's just horrible. And for what it's worth, if you talk to him, please pass along my incredible sympathy for what he suffered and the effect it's had on his life. That's I mean, you couldn't work to create somebody who was going to have addiction problems probably any harder than your mother did. So I'm very sorry for that.
Well, thanks, and I appreciate what you do as far as the nonviolent parenting thing, because my daughter has a 17-month-old grandchild. Child that's my grandson, and I've been sending her some stuff about and I myself beat the crap out of my children, thinking that was the right thing to do because I didn't know any better. I have since apologized to them and told them, please don't do that to your children, and given them some of the stuff that you've given that you've mentioned. I gave my daughter the book by Don't Do Drugs and Stay Out of School, and
Right.
I read that really fast. Sent that to my daughter, and my daughter's doing so much better of a job of raising her child than I ever did of my children, because I was in my own indoctrination and in my own world and trying to, meet the expectations that were cultural for me,
Right.
So
Right.
I'm out of that, and I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome, and congratulations on turning it around with your own kids. That's good. That's good for you. Yeah. So my feeling is that to get drawn into this kind of exposure, it's almost like you're making the system personal, and it's not that that's impossible, but I'm always a bit, at least for me, I'm concerned with making the system personal. Right. So, I mean, this guy's a lawyer. He has to survive in the legal system, which is not an easy thing to do and keep your integrity, right?
Right.
So I think asking him to threaten his own legal profession for the sake of a Facebook post is asking quite a lot, right? And so I think the way that I would approach it, which doesn't mean anything, I'm just telling you what I would approach. The way that I would approach it is to say that the hypocrisy that this man is displaying is another reason why statism has to go. Because here's a guy who's really interested in freedom, who, because he's involved in a state cartel, in a state monopoly called the law, ends up having to violate his own principles about freedom of expression and standing up for the truth in order to maintain his standing or his status within his community. This is another example of why statism has to go. But to take him to task would, I think, be personalizing a bad system. I don't know if this makes any sense, but it's making his choices are not independent of the system that he's operating in. Now, should he be a lawyer or is it, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter because people don't spend, 8 years getting a law degree and articling and all that kind of crap and then say, hey, I'm an anarchist. I'm going to just, throw it all and go and work at Denny's. People don't generally do that. So I think you could look at this as another tragic example of what statism does to people's integrity. I'm not saying view him as a victim or anything like that, but he certainly is not. I mean, if he was in a free society, then this would not even be an issue. And I think that's what we want to try and get to, not necessarily fight each individual's adaptation to a destructive system.
I think that's brilliant, Steph. You answered I knew, of all people, because I've had advice one way or the other, you shouldn't take that, and all this, and it's like, but I don't want to invest so much personal stuff in it, and I don't want to necessarily attack him, but I think that would be a great to highlight, to example, like you said, an example to show this is why statism has to go. So I sure appreciate you taking the time and talking to me, Steph. I just love you to death, and I keep promoting you everywhere I can. And when is your documentary coming out?
It's still up in the air. What's happening is that because I'm hiring more people and have even better people involved, I want to make sure that the quality remains consistent throughout. So we're doing a little bit of redos, and so it'll probably still be a Q1, like first couple of months of next year. That's my feeling. Hopefully earlier rather than later. But again, that sort of depends on the amount of cash that comes in and all that. So, but listen, anytime you want to call in, look, I mean, we just had 20-minute convo. Hopefully, it's going to save a lot of time, trouble, and difficulty for you. And I know it's going to help other people too. So anytime you have a question, you're welcome to call in.
Thank you so much, and I sure am so sorry that I missed you. I could have seen you at the I think it was the Liberty Festival in Las Vegas, because I live close to there. I'm living in, I call it Polygamyville, Utah, because we got away from there. My husband says, there's too much stuff going on here, and I think that the sheriffs are going to come and just kill us because you're just stirring up the whole hornet's nest around here, Lily. So anyways, I wish, but hopefully I'll get an opportunity to meet you in the future, Steph.
Well, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I'm going back to Texas next year, and I'll certainly post about that. And I'll probably be back in Vegas next summer. So it would be really great to shake your hand, and we'll have a coffee.
Oh, that would a good latte for you.
A latte, absolutely, and thank you so much for all of your support of the show. I mean, it is the efforts of people like you that is what drives the growth. I mean, hopefully, I've been putting out good stuff for years, but the reason it's growing is because people are sharing the material. So I really, really appreciate that.
A lot of people, Steph. I mean, it gives me a sense of hope, because the efforts of grassroots people like me are becoming synergized. They're synergizing, and I think it's going to just explode at any time. I'm just so excited about that. So it gives me hope. Thank you for what you do.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good one.
This is TigerLily reminding everyone that I don't ride to be safe, I ride to be free.